Look at this big Texas sky, Horton.
Yeah.
Do you think that's been one reason why your plays have so much space in them?
My plays come out of a lot of meditation. I do not know where they come from, but they're very persuasive when they start going in me. They make demands.
There's a letter just now waiting for me at home from this girl in College Station. She's having a baby. She wrote me she thought I was the father. I could be.
Horton, I think, is way up there in the pantheon of American playwrights, way, way up there.
Anything of Horton I like doing. It's the kind of thing you can't force his material as an actor. You can't push it because it's very kind of delicate.
I'd like to express my gratitude to the cast and crew of Tender Mercies.
He worked in theater, he worked in film, and he worked in television. So everybody sort of sees part of his career, but they don't see the whole thing.
The winner is Horton Foote for To Kill a Mockingbird.
The Orphan's Home Cycle is a series of 9 plays, which is an attempt at writing about my family.
It was never a question to me that he would be this active, because he can't not write.
Lights come up and Horace Jr. enters.
What you really, as a writer, trying to strive for is a sense of truth. And the truth can be very amusing sometimes, but then sometimes it's heartbreaking.
Horton understood that in a play, people to be interesting don't have to have any qualities except humanity to them.
I have to tell you this. Even when your father gets well, I can't live with him again. I don't love him anymore.
I'm on the side of those of us who have to struggle in the world.
He knew that he was speaking for everybody. The details equal the universal.
Oh, Mama, I lied to you. I do remember. I remember so much. This house, the life here. Mama, I want to stop remembering.
My wife is there, and my brother, and his wife. And I'll be there.
There's a place for my body between Hunter's grave and my 2 girls. And that's where I'll end up, out on the prairie.
I've tried to write about New England, but it's never been with my heart and for the sense of I am home. And this is my home, and this is my territory.
Listen, you hear that? The wind on the prairie. I think there'll be a storm tonight. I never mind them, you know. Storms comfort me somehow.
Hi, Anne.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
That's a pretty backdrop. I like
You
the
know,
flowers.
I'm in my hotel room, and I couldn't figure out the best. This is on where the desk is. So, but
Right.
those
it's fine.
dahlias. I visited a friend in Connecticut 2 days before I came over to the festival. She and her husband are in Kent and have this nice property, and she grows dahlias. So she gave me a handful of dahlias to bring to my hotel room, and I patterned I did double cup.
Wow, that is a very nicely jerry-rigged.
You know, I feel like an engineer kind of, and I'm usually not that person. And they've stayed very beautiful in the window of my hotel room. And there's a gorgeous view out that window, but I pulled that down because it was too much glare behind me.
Yeah, well, typically that's true, but it looks fine. And for our purposes, we're okay because I know you're not at home. You're not in a, you're probably your typical.
I haven't choreographed that background like you do at home, with either your favorite painting or your bookcase or something that, makes you look smart or artistic or something.
Where did they put you up?
I put myself up at I'm at the Holiday Inn Express in Saugerties.
Okay, well.
I kind of found, I'm not sure when they notified everybody. I think I got notified. I might have gotten notified kind of on the back end because by the time I started looking for places, I couldn't find much in Woodstock, and except for some Airbnbs that didn't have very good cancellation rates. And at the time, a month or 6 weeks ago, I didn't know if COVID was going to get, whatever, if it would.
Right. It's a tricky time.
And so I just said, you know what? I'm happy as a clam in Holiday Inn Express. That's my comfort level. And it's actually been a great little place. I just drive 10 minutes into Woodstock and it's no big deal.
Oh, no. So for those listening, yeah, Saugerties is next door to Woodstock. It's and I'm right across the river where I am. I'm right across the Hudson from Saugerties.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the festival's been good. You had a good screening. Have you had, how many screenings to date have you had?
Well, this festival, I just had one that was late yesterday.
Okay. How'd that go?
It went great. It's sometimes when you're on the end of Sunday, you don't really get as much of a crowd as you'd like because all the other filmmakers have left, right. And you end up with a local crowd. But lucky for me, we ended up with a really nice local crowd. I think there's obviously there's some Horton Foote fans in the area, and Horton's daughter Daisy lives about 20 minutes from Woodstock on the other side, and so
closer to where I am. Yeah,
she did that Q&A with me, and she was
nice.
And I think she had some fans there and friends, and so we ended up with a nice screening. But I tell you, the best part of it is every single time I've screened this film to anyone, anywhere, I don't care if I have a big audience, small audience, middle-sized audience, they love it. And I'm going to say though that myself, that there is something about Horton Foote, he captures your heart early in the film. It's a very moving, touching film. It's a lot about his career, but it's not done in an academic way. It's done in a very heartfelt way because that's who he was. And that's what his stories were. So
I didn't like him.
What's that? Yeah.
I didn't like anything about the guy.
Oh God, I know, he was so unlikable. You're probably the first person on the planet who's ever even had the courage to say that. But
I'm sure I'll regret that, even the joke.
Maybe he will grow on you in the years to come.
Maybe so. Well, I was introduced to him many years ago when I was a young adult, and I saw The Trip to Bountiful on the screen, and I just thought that was one of the most beautiful movies I had ever seen, and then I saw Tender Mercies. I think I got the order right, but I can't be sure. Maybe I saw Tender Mercy first, but I wouldn't have known. Now I didn't mean to interrupt you, Anne, but you were, if I'm not mistaken, the script supervisor on Tender Mercies, were you?
Yes, that's correct. That was one of my first movies as a crew member. I'd done a couple of small things in Dallas, and I had done a lot of commercials, but that was it was kind of my first real movie. And I lucked out and got on it because there were two other experienced script supervisors in Dallas at the time, and they were both on TV shows or something. And no one really knew what the little movie that came to town with an Australian director was. So it landed in my lap.
Bruce Beresford? Was it Bruce Beresford?
Yeah, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It started my career. It's where I met Horton. I stayed friendly with him and in touch with him for all the years after because we sort of hit it off, not because of art and theater and all that, but we hit it off because I'm from a small town in Texas, on the opposite end of Texas. And so he was just infinitely curious about my life, and like he was with everybody. I was not special in that way, but because I grew up in a small cotton farming town in the Texas Panhandle, he would ask me just question after question, and we just got close, and we wrote letters for many, many years. And then when he was in his 90s, his wife had died, and he was living with his daughter Hallie out in California, but she would bring him home for weeks and months at a time to stay on the homestead. They still have the house that Horton was born and raised in. And he would come back there and spend weeks and months like writing, even in his 90s. And I would go down and visit them. And we would drive around town, and he would talk about his favorite thing to do was drive around and tell me stories. And one day I thought, man, I'm getting the backdrop of his 70-year body work. So I want to record this. And I asked him if I could bring a camera crew. And he eventually
capitulated,
said yes. And so we started filming him, and I was able to film him the last 3 years of his life. And then then I got all the interviews and all the other stuff that's in the film. And it became this documentary called Horton Foote, The Road to Home. And that's, but it was made out of this was not made by me to become a documentary filmmaker. I've never done one before.
No, I know. This is your first and only documentary feature film that you directed. Yeah.
Yes. I did it for him. I didn't do this to make money. I didn't do this to start a documentary career.
The love
I did
poem,
it for Horton
love
Foote.
letter. Yeah, right.
And
that's
I hope
beautiful.
And that's why I just hope that, I don't know how many people we had in the audience last night, but I had a couple of family members who came, and everybody in the audience really responded, stayed for the Q&A. And I told my sisters afterwards, we went and got a bite to eat. My sister and a niece came. And I said, 50 people at a time. That's the way I'm going to do it. 50
Right.
people that get to see this film. I'm going to get this thing to as many people as I can, 50 people at a time.
Well, you came through because, like I said, I was a fan of his sensitivity, his ear. It's such an incredible ear, for these characters. I mean, again, I was not fortunate, even though I grew up and lived in New York City pretty much my entire life until recently. I've never seen a Horton Foote play on stage. So I'm one of those people that, have just seen the adaptations, but he's been involved in the two of my favorites,
Right.
which are The Trip to Bountiful and Tender Mercies. But Tender Mercies in particular, you can see I have a sort of a soft spot for songwriting and songwriters. So he just sort of, that Duvall character, and again, I'm referring to the film.
Yeah.
That was an original screenplay too, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was original. That was not
a play. Yeah,
that was an original screenplay.
Right. But wow, just one of the great American films. Undeniably, just that performance by Duvall, and the clip you show in your film, I thought was really one of the most powerful moments. It's so understated. I want to set it up because, and maybe I can even include it or something, because this is a great writer. So Ellen Barkin, who I had a part of my own personal history, but plays his sort of estranged daughter. Right.
Yes.
He's so they reunite, and she brings up this memory she had. Right. I just bring it up because I think it'll do this Horton justice, just to illustrate one scene where, and she says she had a memory of him singing the lyrics to the song. She's a fragile person, this young woman. And he, in a tender way, he says, no, I don't have any recollection of those lyrics of singing that to you when you were a little girl, and then she leaves, and then he goes to the window. It's just so beautiful. And he starts singing the lyrics. That's just brilliant.
Who, like we say in the film, the power of Horton's work and his words is what's not being said. And that's what the scholar that I use quite a bit in the film, because he was a close friend of Horton's, but he was also the most studied man in his work. And there are written books about Horton, in particular with film. And Jerry Wood, and he says, that he leads in with that. The power of Horton's work is things that aren't being said. And that in that scene, what's even behind that, as you know, he's been estranged with the girl's mother. They've had a bitter divorce. and she won't allow the daughter to even see him. And she sneaks away because they're in the area doing a concert. The ex-wife is a big country music star. And the daughter slips away and comes and finds him and just sees him for an afternoon. And when she asks that question, of course he knows the song, but he loves his daughter so much, and just having that moment with her, he's not going to do anything to put another rift in her, her. It's almost like out of respect that he just says, no, I don't remember.
Oh, that's not how I interpret it. I didn't interpret it that way. But then again, Anne, right? It's, of course, you supervise the script, so I have to give you the credit for, but I kind of look at it as like his punishing himself, not being able to allow himself to receive this deep connection with his daughter.
We could both be right. Because that's how deep and layered Horton's work is. And that's what's so wonderful about it too, is how you interpret it one way and I interpret it another, but they're both correct with that character and that story. And of course I know, all the scenes that precede that, it's just fireworks when the mother ever comes on screen.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, it's almost, I always thought there was just an element of too, that he's like, I'm not going to open this can of worms. The more I draw my daughter back to me, the more she's going to have issues with her mother, and I have to just let that be. And I'm going to take what I get of her,
Were you hoping? Go ahead, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but that ties in with what you said too. Is he's still a little repressed, this guy, and a little afraid, and he's just learning to be vulnerable again.
Right. Well, there's a fear of it because of the alcoholism and.
Yes. Yes.
But
that's one of we shot that scene in one take on the film. It was, I mean, the shot of where he walks back in the house after she drives off and walks over to that window and pulls the curtain in the direction she went, watching her go and sings the song, On the Wings of a Snow White Dove. We shot, Duvall sang it, and that's not, the way Bruce Beresford shot it is beautiful. He just stayed on his back. Most filmmakers would have come around and cut to a close-up and whatever, and, it had just the loneliness and the power of that. But here's the other thing. I guarantee you that most of the people that see that film think, oh, what they did is he walked to the window and did this, and you're on the back of his head. So they put the song in later and got the perfect version. No. That was live. In the one take we did, he walked back in the room, went to the window, and we had a great sound guy who, and he was mic'd, and he sang that song with his back to us. And that's what's used in the movie. We did one take, and when that take was over, I mean, grown men were crying. I remember the camera operator pulled his eye back from the eyepiece, and he's just like wiping tears away. It was a powerful moment when we shot it. And it's one of the most powerful moments in the film,
Thank you for sharing that. That's great. As one of my favorite movies, that's great. I was so excited to bring you on because, I didn't know initially that you were the script supervisor and you were on the set. That's just wonderful because it's one of my favorite things is to get some juicy but beautiful stories like you're telling. That's wonderful. Was there anybody? I mean, I can't imagine that anybody said no to you in terms of the talk, what we call talking heads, but it's really just the friends and fans of Horton Foote who have populate your documentary. Again, it's called Horton Foote: The Road to Home. But I imagine anybody who didn't appear in it only because of practical purposes.
Right. Oh yeah. We never had. Everyone was. Jumped at the chance to talk to me about Horton Foote. There were certainly other people that I wish that I had the budget to go, I could have, if I'd had the budget to go chase a lot of people down, I probably could have gotten more. I also could have, there's so many other routes I could have gone, but what I had the core of the people that, for the most part, the people that really were in his inner circle, the people who really were involved in his life, especially at the end. And here's something I'll say about it. There are there are segments I use throughout the film. They were almost kind of like bookmarks to go to a new section, like chapter breaks. There are 9 of them, and they're monologues of just an actor in a black box space reading, or a black. We did them in black and white, just reading Horton's words, anywhere from a 30-second to a 10-second thing. They're the monologues, and they were our they were the poor man's theater clips, because I was having trouble getting theater clips. Those are really hard to get. Movie clips are easy. Theater clips are not, they don't make it easy. So we said, well, we'll just do our own, and we did that. And a lot of people on my team and around me said, what you need to do is go to Hollywood and use your connections and everything, and you get well-known actors to do those, which I could have done that. And I said to myself, you know what? Those are about Horton's words. They're not about speaking. And I could go out there and get famous actors to do those. But then the audience would be, oh, look, there's so-and-so, and whatever. And they'd be
distracted from the words themselves.
5 or 10 seconds, and then they might listen to the last part. And so I found perfectly wonderful actors in Austin. And then a bunch of those actors, the younger ones, were theater students at Texas State University. And we did auditions and narrowed it down to a few, and they're all in the film. And people love those monologues, and they love that they were done in a way that it's about Horton's words, and it's not about. And there's so many times in this film where people like Edward Albee speak about how Horton didn't write characters; he wrote people, and about the ordinary is. He found the power in the ordinary, and so in the film it makes sense that those people that reading those words, those actors, come across as just your next door neighbor, as opposed to, oh, look, there's Tom Hanks reading,
right.
That would have had less power. And I can say this too, I'm sorry to be going on about this, but I've seen a lot of documentaries that are about a famous person. And what they do is they go out and get every other famous person they can to tell you how great this famous person is.
Right.
And I don't like those documentaries. Half the time I turn them off. And I thought that's not what this film is. It's about Horton. And what Horton was about was the ordinary people around him in his hometown. The hometown's a character in this film because he wrote for 70 years about one small town in Texas that was inspired by his hometown.
Horton?
Yeah, and I don't need celebrities I just want to show you who he is. I did not want, I didn't feel like I had to have the crutch.
If they want to endorse, let them, if they want to endorse the movie, your documentary, then let them, that'd be great. But they don't need to distract from Horton's words is the point.
Exactly. And so that I stuck to my guns on that. And I feel like it was the right thing to do.
Well, the beauty part, if I may add, is that you were able to have your world, as a result, possibly, you had your world premiere at the Austin Film Festival, which is a great festival, and it's right at home, right? It can't be terribly far from where you were from or where.
Well, I'm from Austin, but I have
that's your hometown. Okay.
Austin. Well, I'm not. I wasn't born and raised there. I live there now.
Okay.
I was, like I said, I was born and raised on the cotton farm in the Panhandle. But here's the thing about Austin. Austin is a wonderful festival, and I'm not just saying that because I live in Austin. That festival is one of the best. I'll just say it. It's the best one I've ever been to.
Oh.
Because
don't say that when you're at the Woodstock Film Festival.
I know, but here's why I love Austin. Austin has a writers' conference. That festival was founded on the thought that most festivals focus on celebrities, celebrity directors, celebrity actors, that sort of thing. And Barbara Morgan, who runs the Austin Film Festival, had a brilliant idea, which was, how about we focus this festival on the writer? And no other festivals were doing that. And she started that almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
And started it with a writers' conference that runs for 4 days.
I didn't know that. No.
And so what happened is, us poor writers, I'm a writer, we stay in the background in our little dark room doing all, we don't get any attention. And suddenly all these writers from Hollywood were like, yeah, I'll go to that festival because I don't ever get in the spotlight. If they want to put me in the spotlight, I'm there. We want attention too.
Right.
And now every important Hollywood writer from New York, LA, even from other countries, come to the Austin Film Festival, and it's grown into that. So at me being a writer, but more so Horton being a writer, that festival was really a good festival for us. We won an audience award, and it was a wonderful festival because it almost was full circle too, because they give these writer awards every year. They do Distinguished Writer Award, and I mean the big dogs get them. But the very first Distinguished Writer Award that the Austin Film Festival gave 20-something years ago was Horton Foote.
Wow,
and
that's huge.
So to be able to bring my Horton Foote documentary there, and so listen, I'm not saying that Woodstock is a wonderful festival. I was thrilled to be in it, you know.
And there are many playwrights in the area. I mean, it's obviously an area that draws a lot of artists and writers, this area.
Right. So
there's going to be a lot of Horton Foote fans in the Hudson Valley.
And I felt like, you know, again, the audience that we did have last night, there wasn't a person in the room that wasn't moved by the film. And I know that, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I had the best subject matter ever. The smartest thing I did was turn the camera on him and keep it rolling. And because he just carries the film in the most beautiful, heartfelt way that in the end, you're just weeping that he's gone.
This is the project of a lifetime for you because, I mean, you said you met him in 81, right? And now it's 40 years later.
Yeah.
So, you know, and he died in the mid 80s, didn't he? Or no, not that.
Oh, no, he died about 11 or 12 years ago.
11 or 12 years.
A little over a decade. I think
he lived into his 90s, as you said. Right.
I think 2009 is when he died.
Where is it going to be next, by the way, so people can look for that? Is it?
You know
do you have more festivals, or are you waiting for distribution now?
No, this kind of ends my run of festivals, and there's somebody actually in Estonia trying to get me to bring it over there. And
you should do it.
And so I don't know if that's
totally do that.
But there's a lot of travel stuff going on right now, and you never know if that's going to really happen. But which would be kind of cool because they're honoring also a cinematographer this year that's a friend of mine who I've worked with for many years, and we're going to try to do some joint events. His name is Alar Kivalo, and he's an Estonian Canadian cinematographer that I worked with and have loved dearly. But anyway, here's the thing. I premiered at Austin a year ago in October. Okay. And this is October. And most festivals, most films, you kind of have your year of festivals. And then it's like, let's find a home for this. And I'm already in the process of that. I'm looking, I've got 2 different entities I'm talking to, and I've already got the educational distribution set up because I have to tell you, I think at least the value of my film is just as much in its educational value as it is its streaming and entertainment value. And I definitely
and that is means for people, schools and libraries and other community centers,
libraries, and especially college libraries, theater programs, writing programs. And I had so many people say to me that when they viewed this film, and also I even have it on my poster because Rick Linklater said it in one of his interviews. He said every young writer should see this film, and it's true. This is a role model for young writers, this guy. And to have longevity the way he did, and to stick to your guns and write what you love and know that's in your heart, not write for what's popular. And there's so many lessons for writers in this film. So quite honestly, I've learned over the year of trying to get this out there and showing it to people that its educational value is huge, and that's where it's going to have a lot of legs. And I want that to happen, and because that's where he's going to live on as well. I wanted to have a nice streaming television, whatever, but I also love this company, and it's one of the best companies in the country for educational distribution. And they jumped on it because they said, first of all, we love the film, but we think it's got great possibilities for us because you're the only Horton Foote documentary.
That's amazing. I tell you, look, he's an American master, whether it's part of that series or not. I don't know if you're talking to those folks, but anyway, he's clearly
they're in the mix. But listen. I don't know at this point what's gonna happen. Anything can happen on that end, but that's what I'm going to dive into now. So quite honestly, I guess I can probably truthfully say that Woodstock was the end of the run.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad it brought us together. Really happy.
Yeah, it was a nice place to finish.
Glad I got to see it and to meet you. Can you just, as a final moment, maybe you could just clarify for people who don't know what a script supervisor does, because so many people watch credits and they see these things, but they don't really understand. Obviously, you must work closely with the screenwriter and the production set. You're sort of the go-between. How does that work?
Well, honestly, script supervisors, you're basically the director. The director's the closest person you work with. By the time a script supervisor comes on, the writing's done for the most part. They may come in and do rewrites and such, but I'm that person or a script supervisor is that person that technically breaks down a script in every possible way because you shoot them out of sequence.
Right.
So that's the circus net of every department where if you're shooting a scene where a man walks in a door and he's carrying a briefcase and a hat, you might have shot the hallway or the outside of the house 2 months ago in another town. Right. And then suddenly you're on a stage and he walks in that door and someone has to remember, did he have the hat on, off? Which hand did he have the briefcase in? All those technical details. You also track the dialogue and make sure all the dialogue's correct. And then you're matching within a scene. You do 10 shots for every scene. So you don't want the actor in the wide shot, he said the line standing at the desk, and in the close-up, he said it's sitting in a chair. So that's what a script supervisor does. It's a technical job. It's not you're the technical circus net, so everybody else gets to be creative.
Yeah.
And that's why
one of those key positions that are taken somewhat for granted by the public, but not by any director worth their salt, right? Because of course the script supervisor will save their film.
The editor, I tell you what, at the end of the day, if the director liked me on the set and not only my demeanor, my ability to catch mistakes, that's great. But your second boss is the editor, because if an editor likes you, you've done your job well, because they can cut the film the way they want.
Right.
They're not cutting around mistakes. And I prided myself in pleasing every editor I worked with. Yeah. But I did that for a long time, and then I took 10 years off and started writing myself. I wrote 2 films that Robert Altman made, and so I really think of myself as much of a writer as I am.
Which films are they?
It was 2 in the latter part of his career. One was called Cookie's Fortune.
I love that one.
And the other one was called Dr. T and the Women. And,
with Richard Gere and
and Richard Gere and a bevy of women. And
a lot of women.
He was I can't say on the air the premise of it, but anyway, he was a gynecologist, or I call the premise of the film. But he was a gynecologist with a lot of women around him.
So this must be Robert Altman then is your other maybe central person then in your life,
let me tell you,
professional life, right?
He hired me. I went away. I left script supervising for a year and went away to write short stories because I just needed to. When you do a technical job your whole life, I wanted to see what's my creative ability here. And so I went to Oxford, Mississippi, took a year off, got into a short story workshop of one of the best short story writers ever named Barry Hannah, and wrote for a year. At the end of that year, I got a short story published in a New York journal. Robert Altman, it happened to land on his desk. It was a 1-page story. And he loved it and called me up, and we talked about 45 minutes about how movies are more like short stories and novels and blah, blah, blah. And he put me under contract to write for him for a year. He asked me to send him more stories. And then I did that. And he put me under contract, and 1 year turned into 3 years, and 2 movies got made. And so believe me, that 3 years of my life were the best, you know.
I can't imagine. Can you describe what it's like to get that phone call from Robert Altman, where maybe you didn't know he was going to be calling you, or maybe, you know, somebody reached out to you and said, Bob Altman wants to talk to you, but what must that be like? I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll just describe the exact moment that happened. I had gone back after a year off. I had to go back to work as a script supervisor to put money in the bank. And so I was doing a movie called Marvin's Room in New York.
Oh, sure.
And that's also when the short story book came out. And the way it found his way to Altman was through his editor. Found my story in the book and said, look at this. I knew Altman just a little bit socially. I'd never worked with him, but my ex-husband had done movies with him. So I had gone to the racetrack with him and been in a few bars with him, but I didn't really, you know, I never worked with him. He didn't know me he just knew me as the blonde married to the dude that worked for him. Right. And anyway, that landed on his desk because of his editor. And he called me, and that day I was I was in my little script supervisor mode with my little book and my stopwatch and all my little, you know, in that little circus net job on Marvin's Room in New York. And somebody brought me that's back when they wrote your message on a notepad, and brought me this
on a pink slip of paper. Sure. Yeah, I know.
And so they said, call Robert Altman at this number. Well, my first thought was, I didn't start doing happy jumps about anything other than I went, I knew Robert Altman's script supervisor. She's actually a friend of mine today who did almost all of his movies. So I went, my first thought was, he's about to go do a film and Lusa can't do it. Lusa's his script supervisor.
She recommended you.
So Lusa said, call Ann.
Yeah.
So Altman's calling me to see if I can do his job. So I went, I waited till I couldn't get off set, so I waited till my lunch hour, and I found a quiet phone and called him back. He jumped on the phone immediately. I think it was the editing room he was working in. And he just started talking to me about this. He said, I just read the short story you wrote. And I'm like, he's calling me about something else. And we had this wonderful 45-minute conversation until I had to go back to work. I missed lunch, but I didn't care, believe me. And during that conversation, he said, can you send me more stories? And I tell you, I was reluctant at first. I dragged my feet for 2 weeks. And some of my friends were like kicking my butt. They're saying, what are you doing? And I said, well, these stories aren't good enough. The story he reads my best one. Then he'll read these. He'll go, she's not any good. And he'll blow it. And so finally, I got pressured so much, I knew I had to respond. And his office is calling me saying, where are you? And I finally spent a whole weekend trying to tweak 2 or 3 of them. I sent him about 5 stories that I'd written for that class. And he called me. By that time, he said, I want him because I'm flying from Los Angeles all the way to France. He was going to the Deauville Film Festival with one of his films. He said, I want to read them on the plane. So I need you to get them to me before I get on this plane. So I got him about 4 or 5 stories, and he flew to Deauville. And when he landed I'll never forget this moment either. We landed in Deauville. I was at a friend's house in Los Angeles. It was Labor Day. And I was just hanging out. I think I was back living in Los Angeles, but I was at a friend's house, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to cook barbecue for the day, and just lounging around on the couch. And the husband of the couple I was with went back in there and to the office and checked messages when you had a phone message at that machine at that time. And he comes back, and he's got a little pad that he wrote this down. He goes, hey, Ann, you got a message from Robert Altman. He's in Deauville, and he spelled it Doeville.
Wait, that's not the right way to spell it?
No, it's like, well, no. But there's a French way to spell it.
I know.
And I'm looking at that notepad, and I thought that I only gave him those stories like 48 hours ago. I thought, he's not calling me that quick from Deauville to tell me he doesn't want me to write for him. And my heart just skipped a beat. So I raced to the phone. And of course, we were in the morning trying to figure out what to barbecue for the day. And he's in the afternoon over in Deauville.
Right.
And so I jump on the phone and like, hey, what's up? And he said, I want you to write for me. I want to put you under contract. I love these stories. And he said the most beautiful thing you could ever say to a writer. He said, Anne, he said, I love the way you write, and I don't ever want to change the way you write. And I don't ever want anyone else to change the way you write. And now you're going to come to Hollywood, and that's what we're going to do. So he said, quite honestly, I'm doing you the biggest disservice I've ever done to anyone. And I'm like, no, you're doing me the greatest thing that anyone's ever done for me. And we just had this kind of laughter moment about it. But that was, I'll never forget that time that he believed in my writing that much to bring me in his loop and let me write 2 films for him. And we did one little television episode too of something else, but mainly the 2 films. Or that was
right. Well, he did. He resurrected the political series.
Tanner.
He brought that Tanner 88. He brought that back, right? For
yeah, that came back later. He did 2 or 3 films after my run with him. That was the thing about Altman. I had a great run with him, but I'm a Southerner, and Cookie's Fortune was set in Mississippi. It's a Gothic comedy in Mississippi. We call it a non-murder mystery. That one with Glenn Close, Julianne Moore, Charles Dutton. It had a great Chris O'Donnell. Patricia Neal played Cookie, the famous Patricia.
Of course, one of her last roles, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And he brought her out of obscurity because no one was.
Sure.
But anyway, that was a joy for me. And then, of course, Dr. T and the Women had all the Richard Gere and all the amazing women in it. And so he went through his Southern stage for 2 or 3 years with me. But as Altman tends to do, he doesn't stay in his box of, I'm going to do this because this is the place I know. He was that guy who always wanted to go learn something new. So after me, he said, okay, I've done my Southern stage, so I'm going to release you out of the nest. Go do your career, but thank you for what you did for me. And so I was on my own, and he went from that to ballet, and then he went to the
Woe Begone.
Yeah.
He ended with Like Woe Begone. Yeah.
Yeah, but in between was the British.
Yeah, that's right. He did those couple of the Gosford Park.
Gosford Park, and he. So if you just look at what he did toward the end, Altman would.
No, he's clearly. I mean, it's he's one of those guys that you just could have lived multiple lifetimes because he would never get tired of what he was going to do next.
Exactly.
And they don't all have to succeed. It's it's reaching for something, it's the ambition, and it's the courage, the artistic courage, which is what makes it so exciting. It's not, they don't all have to be as successful as a Nashville or, Gosford Park, it turned out, was a big, huge award-winning success on a commercial, level. But, for somebody like me, and I'm guessing for yourself, we don't hold these people by how many Oscars they get or how many Pulitzers in the case of Horton Foote, but by their journey, which and their trajectory, which I think your film explores with Horton.
Right. I know I've turned this conversation into Altman. Sorry about that.
No, I did that.
The thing about Altman,
I did that.
Okay, good. I'll lay that on you. But the thing about Altman, I always called him a farmer. Altman was always about the next one. When we would go do press for one of our films, they'd be asking questions about Cookie or Richard Gere, if it was Dr. T or whatever. And all Altman wanted to do was talk about the next one because he already had some idea of what he wanted to do next. And even if he didn't have one dime to do that, he would just be touting it like, yeah, we're about to go do this thing here over here. And we're going to, and he was just, that guy was all about the next one. Every year, if you look at his career, he had about a 40-year career of directing movies, and he did a movie every single year. He wasn't one of those guys that, if he had a failure, he hid in the closet and cried for 2 years. Or if
Right.
he had success, he rode.
Well, yeah, you're right, because even during the period
he was like a
his low period where he was kind of out of Hollywood, he was doing these adaptations, which from the theater, and you know, which maybe fewer people saw. But now people are looking back at those films, and you know, but that insatiable hunger that he had to be artistic and to make stories, you know.
To bring this back to Horton, what another thing Horton Altman was doing in the end, and Horton was still alive. Before he died, he was trying to do. He had 2 films on his docket, and I actually kind of got involved in one of them again because he was looking at trying to do a feature film based on that documentary called Hands on a Hard Body. It was a Texas documentary.
I remember that. Yep.
And that was in the works, but he had one other thing in the works, and guess what it was when he died? He was collaborating with Horton.
No, come on, I was going to say.
To do, I think it was the play that someone had adapted for the screen, not myself, called Lilydale. And they had tried to do that movie years ago, and it fell apart. Horton had tried to do it. And Altman suddenly got, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, would this be full circle for me? But also the strangest combination I could ever put together, Horton Foote and Robert Altman, because of the, you know, just so different, but how that would have been a wonderful collision of art. The, you know, the cynic and the gentle giant who just wrote the most complicated, beautiful, but small Southern stories. And that was in the works. I think what I remember when I went to Altman's memorial service in Los Angeles about 3 months after he died. They didn't do it immediately. And I sat with Horton at Altman's memorial service, and we talked about how it would have been really nice for his film with Horton to have worked. And so anyway, that's a little full circle there. Maybe that.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing all these stories. I mean, what a great time. I apologize for us not being able to connect sooner, but I'm glad we did connect, and
right,
we're very grateful to that, and to having had the opportunity to meet you, and seeing Horton Foote, The Road to Home.
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me, and you know, it was great to be here. I'm headed back to Texas soon, so
safe travels to you.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again. I'm sure you have many more anecdotes to share. Because if anybody looks at your filmography on IMDb or what have you, I mean, you've been doing many. You've worked on many film sets, obviously. So you probably some great. You're probably you're there watching and listening, and right.
Yeah, right. Well, I oddly enough, I can't get back to it because I jumped off of it 2 years ago because so much was going on with this film. But I've started about 3 or 4 years ago. I started writing a memoir, and I call it a memoir-ish because I kind of have a hard time even saying that word. Like I'm writing a memoir.
Well, your experiences, right? It's not so much. Well, memoir suggests it's all about you, but you're saying that maybe this is about things you've experienced being on the sets and throughout your life and the people you've met, and maybe it's more about an outward look.
It is about, you know, a lot of the experiences I have had with work. But I have to tell you, I'm still to this day, as much as I've had the most glorious film career you could ever have, I have, you know, we didn't even get into some of the amazing directors I got to work with, but I still think that probably some of the most interesting things about my life were my childhood. The simple little things. It's the kind of stuff Horton wrote about. I'm not so sure that that part of my life, and if this book ever gets finished, that part of that book is going to be the first part, how you grow and learn and move on. And I had an extremely interesting and meaningful childhood, and when things were so limited, and then I end up in Hollywood, and so, you know, it's the whole thing, you know.
Right. And when I say right, I mean Write, W-R-I. Get busy, write this.
Get back in that. That's
and
why. That's
then you
why
can
I
come
was
back on and we can do this again.
Okay, yeah. When my book comes out, you'll have me again.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you can come on anytime, man, but that will definitely be a reason to do it. And I'd love that, So thank you very much.
All righty. Well, thank you. Have a good one. You too.